Today I'm going to get my moko kauai. Moko kauai is the chin markings, and it is to denote whakapapa, your journey, your story. It's for my mokos, it's for my sons. The rest will be part of my life, achievements. It represents what you do. And I have been working in the advocacy world for 40-odd years, and it all comes together, so it'll be a unique stamp. I think a good change maker is actually somebody that doesn't work on actively wanting to be that for their ego. A good change maker is somebody that does the work because they're committed to the cause, because they're committed to the change for their community.
Dr. Huhana Hiki is known for leading change for the disability community. As a lawyer and someone who lives with a disability herself, she's a formidable force.
I have relapsing, remitting multiple sclerosis, and what that means that the brain isn't quite connecting, the synapses within have been demyelinated. So it's like an electrical cord, and the protection is gone, and it exposes the wires, so they all misfire in the brain. It causes paralysis. I'm having tremors. I get electric shocks in my body. I'm Huhana.
Over the last 2 decades, Huhana has held many roles, from disability law advocate to member of the Human Rights Tribunal and member of the Māori Women's Welfare League. She has even helped guide the UN on Indigenous disability rights.
As long as we know where our main mic is, we can do that.
Today, she has organised a protest at Parliament for the disability community.
The hikoi is something for the community to come together and say, hey, we exist, see us. Don't just talk about us, talk to us. Make yourself comfy and do some politicking, boy. So I called it Te Hikoi o Te Tūmanako Mō Whānau Haua. In English, it's a journey of hope for disabled.
For Huhana, inspiring younger activists to join has been important.
If you're only going to speak once, then come down after if you want to.
When I've heard about the hikoi, I say, look, I want to be part of this. I want to help. I know Huhana for a long time, since I moved to New Zealand. Huhana has a quite a unique style as a change maker. She's tough. I love it.
So I'm hoping this is the catalyst to broaden their voices, bring it loud, bring it clear. We will benefit if they speak up, if they grow, if they become leaders. Up the top. I've been getting this real sense of urgency. Something is telling me that we have to move on getting the Disabilities Act in place and the Ministry of Disabilities, because we've got 1 in 5 disabled in poverty. Only 16% of Māori access disability supports and services. We need to challenging the government to put disabled people high up on their lists to get disabled people into Parliament. And it's no disrespect to the past ministers, but they are not disabled. They're not us. And that's the problem.
Huhana's advocacy started over 40 years ago when her own fight for identity and whakapapa began.
Back in the last century, 62, it was a time when young mothers and fathers were not seen as good people if they got them pregnant before marriage. So my birth mother was 15, Dad was 18, Mum got sent down to Stratford, and she had me early. What they did is they lied to my mother and they told her that I was dying. They said, leave her at the hospital, we'll look after her until she dies, it'll be okay. And what they actually did is they falsified my birth certificate, changed me to Pākehā, and got me out of the Ministry of Māori Affairs. So I got, my treaty rights were taken right on my day of birth, really.
Huhana was adopted into a Pākehā family who were unaware of her circumstances.
I was hard work. I was an undiagnosed ADHD kid, and I'm very hyperactive and probably a bit haututu and naughty. But they were good parents. They were Irish Roman Catholic. Dad held down 3 jobs. Mum worked part-time when we were at school. We were never hungry, yet our whānau was poor. They were just a hard-working, average Kiwi family.
But as Huhana grew into her teen years, a sense of disconnection developed.
It's just that there was no linking into my whakapapa. So I became a very angry teenager, very angry at the whole world. I didn't cope with circumstances or situations, and I acted out and I self-hurt. I just went out, played up, got pregnant.
Still a teenager, the birth of Huhana's first child was complicated and led to a second generation of forced adoption.
I had toxemia. I almost died. Next thing I know, he was taken off me. Probably one of the most painful times of my life. I then took off for a year and went travelling the South Island.
While Huhana was travelling, her father suffered a series of strokes.
And so I came back to care for Dad, but going back to Taranaki was not easy for me. I don't have great memories. So I had to go again, and I did. And I got pregnant at 24 again, and this time I had my beautiful baby son, Josiah.
The birth of Huhana's second baby was also complicated. Josiah was born premature.
His milestones were slightly behind. He's got epilepsy, ADHD and mild cerebral palsy. I still hadn't grown up. I was still drinking, still wanting to explore a party life, and I was struggling with this kiddie. And so at the age of 2, I left him with Mum. And I came to Auckland and I was just hanging out on the streets, actually. I was about 26. And I was under the bridge with the winos, and they were offering me methylated spirits for a drink. And I looked at it and thought, what am I doing? I'm either going to be dead in 6 months, and what's that going to do for him? Or I'll change my life. So I did. I put myself in the Auckland City Mission detox, went to Odyssey House. They got my son back with me. And at the same time, Dad sent me a birthday present. It was a book, Toilet Taming for Toddlers. He'd written in it, and Dad couldn't write very well as scrawl, but he told me and he'd rung me up and told me how proud he was of me. And that meant everything, and it made me really determined that I was going to get my life right.
Dr. Huhana Hiki has a passion for helping people turn their lives around. One of her key roles has been working with prisons.
I'm a report writer. We write cultural reports for prisoners. So our reports are designed to make recommendations to help them come out, get the support they need, the right work they need to be done, so that they don't go back in. Get onto that main road towards Hospital Road. I'm off to Wiri Women's Prison, where I'm meeting with one of my clients. I've been around prisons my entire life, and I've only ever met 1 or 2 that I didn't believe were non-rehabilitative. We've got sociology, psychology, criminology, law, health and wellbeing models. So what we're looking at is not just at the cultural aspects, but a lot of prisoners going in have mental health and addiction substance issues, and also there's a lot of undiagnosed disabled in prison. You know, I'm just trying to see if we can make a difference this way. Morena. My name's Huhana, by the way. You can call me Dr. Who, you can call me Auntie, whatever you like, Kari. One of the things I've found with a lot of my clients is the loss of who they are, a disconnection to their marae, a disconnection to their identity. Would you like to begin with a karakia? Okay. Give me your hand. Whakataka, te hauk, whakataka. For Māori, it's really powerful to need your ancestral knowledge. If I'd never discovered my identity, I don't know if I'd be alive today.
For Huhana, learning about her genetic ancestry was vital to forming her identity.
Part of my search and my Māori journey, I went to Parihaka, and I'd never been to a marae. I was always curious, I always felt an affinity to Māori, but I didn't know. Well, 8 hours later, I was given the name Huhana by Queenie, and my new journey of life began. It helped me get out of a violent relationship. And I've been in and out of counselling all those years, and it wasn't easy, but I discovered that I actually had a brain.
Education was a turning point for Huhana, and she enrolled to study law at Waikato University.
I had been doing nursing at New Plymouth, but I started having to use a walking stick, and they wouldn't let me finish my last year of nursing, so I applied for uni. I remember the dean of the nursing school saying, "Good luck, but you're not that bright, darling." But then Polytech was a very structured system like school, not very good for ADHD kids. University was entirely different, and I loved it. I flourished under it. The first year I was there, I was appointed vice president of the student union. So I already began a political journey in 1993 when I actually arrived there.
Huhana left Waikato University as the first Māori woman with a disability to complete a PhD. She moved to Auckland, where she was the solicitor for the Disability Law Centre, New Zealand's first legal advocacy service for people living with disabilities.
Work I've been doing for the last 3 years has been working with some of the most marginalised clients with disabilities, and it concerns me that we have people who make assumptions on their behalf or assume things around disability and don't see them as clients who have the right to have the same natural justice and access to that as anyone else.
Huhana has kept fighting for a voice for the disabled community. She has represented the community on advisory boards, trusts and committees, including as the chair of the Auckland Disability Leadership Group, national advisor to the Disabled Persons Assembly, and the founder of the Hokinga Mai, a disabled wahine Māori group under the Māori Women's Welfare League.
The journey for me has just been things I do. I've always wanted to do things for other people, and so it's just natural.
In 2015, Huhana was awarded for her services to the disability community with the New Zealand Order of Merit.
Dr. Hickey has been a member of the Human Rights Review Tribunal since 2010.
But her advocacy continues.
Do you feel seen?
We don't, and I'm very loud, but we just don't. You've got pockets of people that are seen and heard, but the majority out there just feel that they're losing hope. They're starting to feel like they're just not loved in this community. People tell them that they're a burden, that we cost them money.
Dr. Huhana Hickey, thank you so much for your constant advocacy for these fellow New Zealanders.
Her advocacy story has helped inspire her mokokauai, as well as her personal journey.
Today is something Mum has been thinking about for a long time. Having the mokokauai, something that represents her lineage, is something that she's been working towards for years. It's part of a really long journey for her. I've been there through a lot of difficult parts along the road, and I've seen her achieve some amazing things. I'm proud of her.
A lot of the wahine that come to me, we reach an age where, tamariki have grown up, they've left the nest. Our sense of life or our purpose may have diminished. So I see it as a rebirth for our women, not only for their cultural identity, but they're looking back through their own whakapapa and through their ancestry and just taking back what is theirs.
After many years campaigning for a better future, Huhana is taking a step back to spend more time with whānau and help inspire the next generation.
What's your dream? Do you want to be a teacher? A doctor? You can be. I've got friends in wheelchairs that are plastic surgeons. As I enter into old age, being 60 next year, it means that I'm now entering a new phase. And as a result, because of that journey, I've decided I'm ending personal advocacy. A lot of that is my own energy levels are dropping, my health is progressing along, my MS, but also because it's time for the rangatahi to begin that, and I want to awhi them through their journey.
As Dr. Huhana reflects on her years of disability advocacy, she's marking her life story with a mokokauai.
For my chin area, that's the whakapapa, that's my ancestry. On my head is a ruahine, and that is my wairua side, my spiritual side. This encapsulates my Aboriginal dreaming, my Māori and Navajo side. For me, it's the beginning of the next phase of my journey.
Huhana has come up with a plan to pass the baton on to the next generation of changemakers with a hikoi.
When I came up with the hikoi idea, and I called it Te Hikoi o Te Tumanako Mo o Whanahawa, was because it's the journey of hope for disabled. So hikoi is a march or a journey progressing on to do something. We saw Robert Martin led the march for intellectually disabled to Parliament, and that led to a whole heap of changes.
1, 2, 3, 4.
I wanted a way of projecting an image that was inclusive. So I've got the wheelie, that's the obvious symbol. I've got the amputee, I've got the hearing impaired. Everyone has a disability in some way in our community, but not all are visible. We've made gains in so many ways, but we've still got the barrier of being micromanaged, of paternalism. We need a Ministry of Disabilities, and we need it to be led by a disabled person, and we need our allies to be a part of it, parents of, because they miss out often. They're the voice for their non-verbal adult children. We need the service people at the table. We need to be linking into every single government entity and policy. And we need a Disabilities Act that oversees every single element of law that we can hook into and be able to influence. This is now my life's journey, and if I die crying out for a Disabilities Act and ministry, then I put a challenge, a wheel out to our younger generation. You pick up that mantle and you carry it forward, because without it, we're not getting anywhere. I've always believed that it's not the voice of businesses, corporates, and the voice of politicians, but of the people themselves. Change comes systemically when the people say, stop. Today is a day not for the politicians to speak to us, but for us to speak to them. Today is a day not for the providers, not for the abled. This is a day for individuals, the individual voices of the unheard. I have in front of me a box to hand over to the minister, and this box holds stories. There's many of them here and many more that could come. And the stories broke my heart. They broke my heart because these are the same stories I've heard time and again in 45 years that I have been advocating since my father had 3 strokes when I was 14. We fight battles after battle to get a house that's accessible. Only around 3% of all housing in New Zealand is accessible. And even then, not fully. We have accessibility, great. But what good is it to implement legislation in piecemeal bits if we don't have an entity, a legal entity, led by disabled, about disabled, for disabled, and no one else? Have our allies at the table with us. Have the parents of disabled children with us. Have those who understand our issues with us, but we lead the decisions. What I'd love is rangatahi to start stepping up and challenging their political parties and start standing. When you look at American politics, they have senators in wheelchairs. They have blind senators. You've got senators with amputations. The UK Parliament, you have disabled barons, baronesses. Kenya, which is a relatively new democracy, actually has a disability parliamentary seat. Why are we not doing this in New Zealand? We lead the way. We gave the woman the first vote. Why are we not giving disabled people the right to sit in Parliament and be cabinet ministers to make decisions for their communities? Until that happens, we are not equal. We have no one sitting in the House of Power right now that has a lived experience and a background in our community that can represent us. The political parties keep us so far down their list that we end up being left off it. We cannot get into Parliament. So let's get on with it, whānau. Because our voice took so many years to get here, it's hard to let it go, but I want to let it go. I want to get on and support them by doing some of the systemic changes, you know, go in there, change policy, do that stuff, and let them speak.
But if we look to inspiration from our disabled brothers and sisters overseas, or here in Aotearoa from those who face discrimination and barriers because of their race, or their gender or who they love or who they worship or don't worship. They made progress also by being visible, by exercising their right to make a little noise and say, ignore us at your peril.
Kia ora.
34,735 people so far signed this petition, and they want to change. Thank you.
Just been at the hikoi of hope for the disabled, and I have to say that their challenge to us in this house was deeply and rightly confronting. Disabled people are rightfully asking, where are they in the government priorities?
The hikoi was amazing. It exceeded my expectations, the people that turned up.
I challenge this Parliament to open up Parliament to have these conversations.
I don't care if I'm not remembered. I am all of my ancestors, and they all are expressed within this. It's about my journey, and my wairua is healing. It's not always going to be fully healed. I still have pain from the rejections and the adoptions and stuff. You just don't have to wake up asking who you are. But I have a burning desire to get back to my artwork and writing around adoption, around the journey of identity, and around growing and healing. It's for my sons and it's for my mokopuna to know themselves and who they are. And so that's my wairua journey.
Yeah!